All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being here with me today. I'm your host, Nolan, and since we were last on the air, a lot has gone down. If you're at all conscious of the news or you're on social media, you would have for sure seen the unrest in Minnesota over the ICE operations that resulted in the deaths of Alex Pretti and Renee just in January. And this has caused a massive social media uproar, and it's giving a lot of the same energy of 2020 and the BLM riots that went down, coincidentally enough, in Minnesota. So I have a lot I want to talk about here today. I'm going to give you guys my entire reaction, give you guys my thoughts, and my overall opinion of the Trump immigration policy. And we're also going to spend a lot of time today just shredding through the mainstream propaganda about all of this, because if you turned on, say, CNN right now to get their coverage, their hard-nosed journalism of these protests, supposedly, in Minneapolis, then you would be of the belief that this was like some Mahatma Gandhi-type operation going down. There's just these peaceful protesters, civil disobedience going down across the city of Minneapolis, when in reality, the footage, which you aren't really seeing on mainstream media, is to the contrary. So we'll get into all this today and more on the Quest for Clarity podcast.
It is about who we are. It is about what we believe.
They're building up this case just like we did in Iraq. Build up the war propaganda. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq.
The more you tell the truth, the stronger you become.
Mr. Speaker, we're not rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic tonight. We're putting coal in the boiler and setting a course for the iceberg.
Maybe we should improve the liberty of our own country before we seek to do so abroad. Some of us have paid attention to the fact that the expert class, including the foreign policy experts, lie all the time. The correct answer to this, of course, as it always is liberty. All right, everybody, before we begin, if you wouldn't mind going right down below this video and hitting like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate that. Also, if you wouldn't mind going to my Instagram, X, and Spotify and just giving all those a follow, I'd really appreciate that as well. Let's get into the news of the day, and we're going to spend all day today, again, covering all the latest in Minneapolis, Minnesota more broadly. And just to recap, kind of, before we get into some footage here, which is just really extraordinary that mainstream media isn't showing you, to recap kind of the background here, you'll remember 2024, Donald Trump wins the Electoral College and the popular vote in large part on a mandate for mass deportations. This is a policy that I've supported. I still support the policy of mass deportations when done correctly. And this is a policy that was really subscribed to by a lot of the Trump base, by the entire Trump base in reality, because we had just come off 4 years of the most psychotic immigration policy in modern American history under Joe Biden, where 10, potentially 20 million people coming up from South America, really from all over the world, flooded through the southern border and went to cities all across the country, whether it be Chicago or New York or Los Angeles or Houston or Boston or Minneapolis, and basically occupied large swaths of these cities with the assistance of the Democratic mayors of these cities and the governors of these states. And this had gone on for 4 years, from the time Joe Biden took office to the end of Joe Biden's presidency. And there was a mass mandate from the people of this country who wanted to take their country back and get mass deportations to get all of these people who had come in illegally, who have no legal or moral right to be in this country, out of this country. This was the mandate that got Donald Trump into the White House. Now, fast forward now, we shouldn't skip over 2025. We get 2025, Donald Trump's first year in office, and what do we see? We see, I'm going to be completely honest here, we see a lack of a plan from the Trump administration. We see Donald Trump concede to big agriculture and big hospitality companies that he will not be targeting those industries because those companies need the cheap labor that illegal immigration produces for them in order to stay making the profits that they are. So now that's a large chunk of the illegal immigrant population that is no longer being targeted by the administration. So these numbers of immigration numbers in Trump's first year, the estimates right now are somewhere in the range of 230,000 people from Trump's first day in office to now who have been deported. And if we're looking for mass deportations, those numbers would have needed to be like 4 times that. They would have probably had to be close to 1 million in 1 year. And the administration was simply not producing. So in order to, and in response to the not producing, the numbers not being where they needed to be, the administration has actually stopped really publicly making those numbers available. You have to go deep to find them. Because in the beginning, they were publishing daily numbers, weekly numbers, monthly numbers of deportations. And as those numbers started dwindling down and really weren't impressive and wouldn't get the base riled up, they stopped posting them. And now, to make up for the lack of numbers, they are engaged in what I like to call performative violence. They are sending these ICE agents into these cities, these Democrat cities, and to make up for the lack of physical, tangible arrests that they are making, deportations that are resulting from these operations, they are having these ICE agents in these crazy street confrontations with these leftist agitators, which I'll get into in a minute because they are anything but peaceful protests. These leftist agitators are now in full-blown street conflict with these ICE agents, and it's just causing massive chaos in this country. And as a result of that chaos, people don't like chaos. As a result of that, we now have the support, the mandate from the country for mass deportations gone. The population of this country is now no longer supportive in supermajorities like they were of a mass deportations policy. So over the course of this first year of the term, we have completely sold out all political capital that was available to the Trump administration to get these mass deportations underway. And they instead chose to get involved in these ridiculous small-scale operations that are just over-the-top violent and unprofessional, to be completely honest. And it results in creating martyrs for the left with Renee and Alex Pretti. And my personal opinion of those shootings is that probably they were not justified. And if you actually look at the video of the Alex Pretti shooting, it looks pretty bad. He's basically turned around. He had a gun in his pocket, never wielded it, and was disarmed and then shot, I believe, 9 times. So all of this is just creating a terrible PR nightmare for ICE, for DHS, for the Trump administration, as they're trying in some way to go forward with this policy while simultaneously not actually really caring about the policy. Because as I said before, they already announced, Trump conceded to the donors in big agriculture and in the hospitality industry that he will not target their labor because they rely on that labor because they don't have to pay them as much. So already we are completely unserious. We already have conceded that I mean the administration. The administration has conceded to the base that they are not actually serious about going forward with their promise of mass deportations. And in order to try and make up for that, in order to try and trick the base into thinking it's happening, they are now no longer publishing the numbers and instead having these massive demonstrations of force in the middle of Main Street, Minneapolis. And it's resulting in these tragic incidents, and it creates terrible PR for ICE. So that is where we are today. That's the timeline of events that leads us to today. Now, one thing I have to say, and I'm going to switch gears here. That is my issue with the immigration policy so far, is that it's not actually producing any meaningful deportations, and instead is resulting in chaos and creating martyrs that has become a rallying cry for the left. And speaking of the left, if you turn on CNN right now, you would be under the impression that these protests, these completely organic grassroots movements, not color revolutions or anything, these protests are completely peaceful. It's like these acts of civil disobedience. This is what they would have you believe. And here are some of the videos, and you'll be shocked by the peacefulness of these videos. It's actually like they're all linked arms walking down the street and singing Kumbaya. Take a look. I mean, in those videos, you see specific hotels that are being targeted by these agitators because they're under the belief they have been informed by somebody that ICE is staying at that hotel. And that is the crucial part. They were informed by somebody. And this brings me to kind of what I want to discuss here today, which is what is this protest movement really? Because it's not a protest movement. I shouldn't even classify it as a protest movement. This is an online subculture of leftism that we've seen pop up here and there. We see it whenever it's opportunistic, whenever we have BLM unrest during 2020. We see this. We saw after Charlie Kirk was assassinated, we saw these people on TikTok that were celebrating it. These people in these communities, whether it be in Minneapolis, Minnesota as a whole, whether it be in Los Angeles or New York or Chicago or any of these other cities where we're seeing this mass unrest, where we're seeing these violent agitators throwing things at ICE officers. They're coming in and throwing smoke bombs at ICE officers. They're literally throwing themselves in front of ICE vehicles. This is not just any sort of left-wing protest movement. These people, specifically, these people that are at these events, many of them are part of their local DSA chapter, Democratic Socialists of America. Many of them are Antifa members. These people are part of this online network of group chats, of signal chats, of all of these online communities that believe genuinely, they are true believers in this cause. They believe they are a modern day Bolshevik revolution. They believe they are leading a worldwide communist uprising against the corporations of the world, and they believe they are going to overthrow the powerful. This is what inspires these people. And right now, when it's opportunistic, once again, you see them out in full force in Minneapolis. Now, why are they so inspired right now to be out in full force? It is because these figures, whether they know it or not, these DSA members, the Antifa, these groups, which are funded by NGOs, which are funded by these undercover government agencies, these intel agencies, these groups, which are essentially the shock troops of the left, are being used as pawns by the Democratic elite. That's whether they know it or not. That is what's happening right now. Because let's just zone in on Minneapolis for a second. What just happened in Minneapolis right before this all blew up? We had Tim Walz step down from going for re-election. Why was that? That was because he was just discovered to have been behind the largest welfare fraud scandal in Minneapolis state history. That's what just happened to Tim Walz. He was a disgraced governor who was about to be gone in a couple months because he's not running for re-election anymore. And right as that happens, right as he's at the bottom of his political career, his fall from grace, from being vice presidential nominee with Kamala Harris to now being disgraced governor, what happens? We get these ICE shootings, the perfect opportunity for these opportunists in the Democratic elite who are looking to rise back to power in 2026 and in 2028. So these people cynically urge their shock troops on the radical left, the Bolshevik communist left, these revolutionaries, these people like Tim Walz, his Peggy Flanagan, his lieutenant governor, these radicals. You have Jacob Frey, the mayor of Minneapolis, urging basically these agitators to throw themselves, to give up their lives for this cause. And they'll word it in these psychotic ways like defending your neighbor. But really, they are political opportunists who think that the best way to get the Democratic Party back into power nationally is to create a movement on the ground of true believer leftists that'll carry them back to power. You see Tim Walz out in the street with a megaphone giving speeches to these people. Tim Walz, who just a month ago was widely acknowledged to have been involved in a massive welfare fraud scandal. $9 billion estimated had gone to Somalian fake businesses in Minneapolis. Tim Walz knew about this. And now he's back to being the hero of the party. You think that's a coincidence? No, he saw this as an opportunity to revive his image. These people don't care. They're happy to see Renee Good and to see Alex Pretti. These people like Tim Walz and Jacob Frey are happy to sacrifice those people if it means more political power to them. Don't think for a second they actually care at all about this cause that these people supposedly believe in, because they don't. They're happy to give up as many Minneapolis lives as they want in order to give them political power, to change their image. That's what it's about. And by the way, this is all part of a systematic effort by the Democratic elite, and in part by the Republican elite and all the donors who donate to both of these parties. All of this whole immigration grift, which has been run in this country for 50 years, this grift, led by the elites of both parties, but again, in this instance, it's very prevalent with the Democrats, this grift to import as many illegal immigrants as humanly possible into this country in exchange for votes. That's the entire purpose. That's why these people are so welcoming of their quote-unquote neighbors, these neighbors who have nothing in common with them, who don't share their language. They expect you to believe this insane lie that Tim Walz deeply, deeply cares about the Somali community on a spiritual level, that he has something so deeply in common with these people from across the world, from Mogadishu. Of course he doesn't. It's all part of this corrupt scam where these Democratic politicians are importing as many people into this country as humanly possible, upending these small towns, and in exchange for that, these Somalian communities will reliably vote Democrat into the foreseeable future. That's the entire reason. And this goes along, of course, with the welfare fraud, which essentially they're paying these Somalians off. That's what this is. Tim Walz knew that the Somalian community in Minneapolis, through the system of fake businesses, was taking advantage of the welfare program, and he let it happen. And now, to make up for this big hit to his image, he's cosplaying with Jacob Fry and Peggy Flanagan, all these clowns, as some revolution leader, as if he's in the streets in his button-up flannel shirt and his beanie, acting as if he's leading this revolution against the powers that be, when in reality, he is the powerful that manufactured this crisis to begin with. And this is the grift that they're all trying to play on you. The Democratic Party, to some extent the Republican Party, and the donors that donate to both of them want the cheap labor and they want the votes. That's the entire reason for this importing of these people from across the world over the past 30, 40 years. That's the entire reason. And they paint it up as if these shock troops on the ground are protecting their neighbors. They don't want their neighbors to be taken away by the Gestapo. That's not the reason that Tim Walz is inspired by this. Tim Walz is inspired because he wants the votes and his donors want the labor. Now, let me turn, speaking of Tim Walz, I just mentioned he is genuinely trying to make these people on the ground believe that ICE is the Gestapo. Take a look at what he had to say. He compared people being deported from this country, people who have no legal and moral right to be in this country. He compared them being deported to Anne Frank. Take a look.
We have got children in Minnesota hiding in their houses, afraid to go outside. Many of us grew up reading that story of Anne Frank. Somebody's going to write that children's story about Minnesota.
I mean, why else would you say that if you didn't want these people on the ground to get all amped up and think that ICE is the modern day Nazi party? That's insane. And that clip alone dispels this notion that Tim Walz is some good actor in all of this. He actually genuinely cares about the folksy people, the folks in Minnesota. Tim Walz cares about political power. That's all he does. That's all he cares about. That was shown over the course of the vice presidential campaign that he tried to run. That has been shown over the reaction to the Somali fraud scandal. And that has been shown in his response, in his taking of his ascent to power, of political power, I should say, over the course of the last 2 weeks throughout this entire ICE scandal. He views this as an opportunity to reshape his image among the Democratic base. That's all he cares about. And if that means telling the people of Minnesota that ICE is the Gestapo and that the Nazi party is on the march again, he's willing to do that. And if that means those people on the ground will throw themselves in front of ICE vehicles and give up their lives in support of this greater cause, he is perfectly okay with that. Now, just to really emphasize the amount of hatred that these people on the left, the cultural figures on the left, the media figures, the political figures, this is the amount of disdain and hatred that these people have for you. Here are some clips I want to run through real quick. About a week ago, Don Lemon, the very untalented, very whiny former CNN host, who now has a job supposedly running around with a microphone and just harassing people. He was involved with a group of leftist agitators in Minnesota who about a week ago broke into a church during a church service because apparently there were some ICE agents that go to that church. So Don Lemon goes up to the guy, I believe one of the guys who works at the church, and goes up to them, and this is what he has to ask him. These are the questions that Don Lemon asked after, by the way, again, after breaking into a church. This is what Don Lemon says to one of the guys at the church. Take a look.
What do you think of this? I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship.
But there were folks who will say,
I have to take care of my flock.
okay, but listen, we live there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Yes.
That's why we're here. Yes. Okay, that's why we're here. Okay. That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding
we're about
and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a Christian?
No one is willing to talk.
Okay.
I have to take care of my church and my family, so I asked that you actually would also leave this building.
You don't want us to chronicle what happened?
Unless you're here to worship.
I'm always worship. I'm a Christian.
We're here to worship. Yeah. We're here to worship. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So you'll notice right off the bat, if you're like a sane person who's attached to reality, that Don Lemon obviously is the one who's involved in the aggression in this situation. These people are in the church doing their thing, and Don Lemon joins in with this gang of agitators and breaks into the church during a church service, a church with families, a church with the community in there. And this guy is trying to do his thing. And Don Lemon breaks into the church, is involved in the action of trespassing, and then has the nerve to go up and in this guy's face and ask him these provocative questions. And then when this guy, who just had his church broken into, maybe extends his arm to maybe make some space between Don Lemon and him, Don Lemon says, I'm going to be respectful, but just don't push me, okay? No, Don Lemon, you narcissistic prick. You were the one who broke into the church. What are you talking? You can't, this is what I'm talking about. You cannot even talk to these people at this point. These self-righteous jerks. I mean, like, what? Don Lemon breaks into a church with this crowd of agitators and then has the nerve, when the guy inside the church running the church session extends his arm to get some space between him and Don Lemon. Don Lemon has the pretentious nerve to say, I'm going to be respectful, but please just don't touch me. Like, get out. And then this is, by the way, this is Don Lemon. Just, I believe, a day or two after this, he went on Jennifer Welch's show, another interesting person we'll get into in a second. Don Lemon goes on her show, and then he says that while he was in there, he had some observations. He had some observations about the people in this church that had just been broken into. And he blames the fact that they were upset about this on white supremacy. Take a look.
And there's a certain degree of entitlement. I think people who are, in the religious groups like that, it's not the type of Christianity that I practice, but I think that they're entitled, and that entitlement comes from a supremacy, a white supremacy. And they think that this country was built for them, that it is a Christian country, when actually we left England because we wanted religious freedom. It's religious freedom, but only if you're a Christian and only if you're a white male, pretty much. And so, yeah, I absolutely 100%, but it's an intimidation tactic. And, I said, I don't understand how I've become the face of it when I was a journalist. I do understand that I'm the biggest name there. And I'm also, as I was on with my producers this morning, you and Kylie talk all the time. My producers were saying, I said, how did I become the face of this? And my producer said, Don, you're a gay black man in America.
So here we have Don Lemon, the man who broke into the church, playing the victim. He says that the reason these people in the church that had just been broken into were upset about it was because they have this sense of white supremacy. They have the sense that this country was built for them and that its religious freedom only goes one way. Like, this, it's just so beyond detached from reality. And this is the narrative that's being pushed. The people inside the church that had just been broken into don't, according to Don Lemon, who is probably more privileged than 99.9% of people in this society, it's not okay for the people in that church to feel some type of way about you and all your other pals breaking into the church while they're just trying to mind their own business. That's not okay. They're not allowed to feel any way about that. But Don Lemon, who maybe got some looks because he just broke into a church, can chop it up to white supremacy and that he's a black gay man in America, and he actually did nothing wrong. It's actually all of them who are the bigots towards him. This is this twisted mind virus that infects these people. It's insane. Speaking of the mind virus that infects these people, the lady he was just next to there is Jennifer Welsh, who repeatedly goes on these racist rants against white people. Here's Jennifer Welsh saying that the cancer in society is white evangelical Christianity. Take a look.
This is a cancer. White evangelical Christianity is a cancer. These are the worst of our country. These are the worst people in our country because they use their religion in two ways, as a weapon and as a shield. They weaponize it whenever they want to and say, we're on the moral high ground. You're a lesbian. You deserve to die. You're a lesbian. The cops shouldn't have revived you. Oh, your parents are Mexicans and they brought you over here. Yeah, you should go to jail and eat worm food. And then when you call them out on it, oh my God, they're after the Christians. How dare they? How dare they? We're so oppressed. White Christians are so oppressed in this country. And they want it both ways because in the religion, that duplicity is taught. You can be morally duplicitous. You thrive in cognitive dissonance. And so this is just a massive, massive problem. And it should come as no surprise to anyone that of this cult that I'm talking about, white evangelicals, I think over 80% went and voted triple trumped.
I want it to be very clear to you guys. These are the people like Jennifer Welsh are the ideological heroes of this Bolshevik leftist movement that's taken the streets of Minneapolis. These are the people that are giving them their talking points. These are the people they are listening to. This is, by the way, Jennifer Welsh also had that crazy clip a couple months ago at Zohran Mamdani's victory party, where she said that America has no culture except for multiculturalism, and those white people need to get in line. Just take a look.
If it was all white people here right now, it would be boring as shit. I've grown up in those circles. Everybody needs some spice and some color in their lives. Life's a lot better. That's the coolest thing about America. Americans have no culture except for multiculturalism.
Well said.
And we need to teach people how to embrace that. These crusty white people need to learn how to embrace it.
In the last two clips here that I have to show you guys, it was there. These are in, when I say these, when I just watched those, the ones before with Don Lemon and Jennifer Welsh, those are enraging. Wait till you see these clips. This is Jimmy Kimmel. We'll start off with Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel groveling and crying on his show the other night about but he says they stand with these protesters that are just trying to protect their neighbors. Take a look.
And to the people of Minneapolis, to the Pretti family and the Good family, and these people who were looking out for their neighbors, we want you to know that we are with you and you are not alone.
I need you to understand this. Jimmy Kimmel, and we'll get into Colbert in a second, these people, these late night hosts, are the worst members of the media because they emotionally manipulate their audiences when it's politically beneficial. Jimmy Kimmel notoriously cries whenever it's politically beneficial, but never when it goes the other way. Jimmy Kimmel, I didn't notice. I didn't see him crying when Irina Zarutska was killed on that North Carolina subway, when she was literally cut up on a North Carolina subway. I didn't see him crying about that. I didn't see him crying when Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungary were killed by illegal immigrants. I didn't see him caring at all about that because he doesn't care. He doesn't care at all about that. Just like he really does not care about this, because he is simply crying for a political purpose. He is a tool. He and Colbert are tools of the political machine and the establishment machine, and they can be trusted to be sent out on propaganda duty whenever it's beneficial to the regime to spew their party line. That's the entire purpose of their show. That's the entire reason anybody watches their show. It's because they can be trusted by the regime, by the establishment, to toe the party line every single time. We'll get to Stephen Colbert right now. This is Stephen Colbert. He says, F ICE. He's a rebel. He's a dissident. Take a look.
I think we can all agree, ICE. Now,
this rebel, this fake dissident Stephen Colbert, who likes to pretend to be tough when it's politically beneficial. Again, Stephen Colbert, this, again, pretend rebel to the state. He is rebelling against the state. He's rebelling against government. Look at this rebel. Stephen Colbert, this is a video that is still publicly available of you on the internet, just shilling for Big Pharma. Take a look. It's this narcissism that allows people like Stephen Colbert to have a video publicly available like that on the internet of them dancing with people dressed as vaccines, shilling for the most powerful corporations in our country. That is what Stephen Colbert does in 2020. And now he gets to come around 6 years later and pretend to be some rebel against the state propaganda, after for years being one of the leading purveyors of state propaganda. So that is where we'll kind of end it off here today. I just wanted to just go through all of that and show you that this narrative that's being pushed about what's happening in Minneapolis and what's happening with these protests is entirely false. These are not peaceful, organic protests. These are basically communist color revolutions in the streets that are being funded by NGOs and are being propped up and encouraged by these democratic elites that are using them as shock troops and pawns in their political games. So that is what's happening. And my message to the Trump administration, they need, and I want to be very clear, again, for the third time in this episode, all of this today, this denunciation of these leftist agitators, that's not defending what happened to these two people in Minnesota. These ICE shootings, I don't think were justified. I don't. I think the Trump administration has failed on this at this point, because there have been very little deportations for all this chaos. They are refusing to even put forward a strategy. A strategy to start would be go to all the red states first, clean those completely up, get the millions of people out of Texas that are probably there illegally, because Greg Abbott will comply. Go to Florida, get them all out. Do the easy thing first. Don't get saddled down in Minneapolis. Let Minneapolis be a disaster. Let them come crawling. Cut off federal aid to Minneapolis. Cut off federal aid to Minnesota. Let them be a sanctuary state if they want. But we cannot get caught up in these PR games that are distracting from the actual point. Because it's these PR games, it's these ridiculous accidents, these scenes of people getting shot in the street. That's going to turn everybody off to the idea of mass deportations. It really already has. And they have not managed this well. I think everybody involved in this really has mismanaged this. So that's where I'll leave it off for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to go down below and hit like and subscribe. And also go to my Instagram, X, and Spotify accounts and give all of those a follow. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Have a good one.
It is about who we are. It is about what we believe.
They're building up this case just like we did in Iraq. Build up the war propaganda. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq.
The more you tell the truth, the stronger you become.
Mr. Speaker, we're not rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic tonight. We're putting coal in the boiler and setting a course for the iceberg.